there, curious minds, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is your dedicated listen to deep dive and learn words session, tailor-made to unlock those essential vocabulary nuggets. For your master's exam prep and honestly, beyond. And hey, if these deep dives are sparking your curiosity, if they're proving helpful, do us a huge favor. Hit that like button and subscribe. Seriously, your support is what fuels us to keep exploring these, well, fascinating linguistic landscapes. Today, we're not just flipping through flashcards. Nope. We're taking a full-on expedition into Day 7, Part 2 of our vocabulary journey. Our mission is to move past simple memorization. We want to truly build a conceptual network around these words. We want you to not just recognize them, but to feel their nuances, understand their subtle power, and grasp precisely how they function in real, complex sentences. It's about building an intuitive understanding, almost like a sixth sense for language.
Precisely. The real mastery, it comes from understanding how these words operate in diverse contexts, not just from a static dictionary definition. We're aiming for a natural feel for their usage, which, as you know, is absolutely critical for robust reading comprehension, especially when you're tackling dense academic texts or, those tricky exam passages. We'll explore how these words interact, how their meanings can subtly shift depending on the surrounding sentence, and how their related forms expand their influence, creating this rich tapestry of meaning.
All right, let's kick things off then. Our first cluster of words, they all revolve around ideas of measurement, adjustment, and the very act of bringing things into being. A pretty fundamental set, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Foundational, and we'll start with moderate. It's a remarkably versatile word. That's probably why it pops up so often in different contexts on exams. You'll find it functioning as a noun, an adjective, or a verb, each with a distinct, yet, related meaning.
Okay, let's look at moderate as an adjective first. It gives such a clear sense of scale. Consider this example. Even moderate amounts of the drug can be fatal. What's truly insightful here is how moderate isn't just about average. It tells us about quantity that avoids extremes. It's not excessive, but critically, it's still substantial enough to have a significant, sometimes, dangerous impact.
Right. It implies a middle ground that's been measured, contained, but not necessarily harmless.
Yeah, like moderate rainfall. Not a deluge, not a drought, but enough to make a difference. Or moderate temperatures. Comfortable, but still in a range.
It's about a controlled, restrained quantity or view or action. And as a verb, moderate implies an action. Softening, reducing intensity, or controlling a situation to keep it within reasonable bounds. For instance, we agreed to moderate our original demands during the negotiations. Here, the verb moderate shows a deliberate act of adjustment, moving something from an extreme position towards something more reasonable, maybe more acceptable.
Finding a balance, a compromise.
Exactly. We see it in formal settings too, like someone who moderates a debate. They guide the discussion, keep it civil, productive, prevent it from spiraling out.
Right, stopping the extremes. It's an active process. De-escalation, reduction, guided restraint. That's a great point about moderating a debate. It really highlights how the word isn't just about quantity, but also qualitative control. And we often hear moderate with views or policies, right? Like moderate political views or moderate economic policies. It suggests something that consciously avoids radical extremes, leaning towards the center, maybe a balanced approach. Measured, sensible, often pragmatic.
Measured is a good word for it. Okay, moving on, we have rate. Another word that truly shows how context is king. It serves as both a noun and a verb, and the meanings diverge quite significantly. As a noun, it's typically about speed, proportion, or maybe a charge for a service. Consider, most people walk at an average rate of 5 kilometers an hour. Yeah, this clearly highlights a consistent measure of speed, pace over time.
Right. But rate as a noun can also be a proportion, like a birth rate or unemployment rate. How often something occurs in a population.
Yes, or the financial sense. Interest rate, exchange rate. Those are costs or values expressed as a proportion.
But then when rate acts as a verb, it takes on a completely different meaning. It's all about evaluation. Assessment. Take this example. The show was rated as a success by critics and audiences alike.
Exactly. Here, rate means to assign a value, a grade, an assessment based on certain criteria, judging quality, performance, standing.
Yeah, we rate hotels, movies, job performance. It's that assessment that leads to a ranking or judgment.
From a simple measure to an act of appraisal, a verdict almost. And this leads to a crucial question for any advanced learner. How does the surrounding sentence guide you to the correct sense of rate? Speed, cost, or appraisal? The prepositions and common collocations, they're your best friends here.
Okay, like what?
Well, when you see phrases like average rate, growth rate, or at a faster rate, you're almost certainly dealing with speed or proportion.
Makes sense.
But when you encounter phrases like rated as, rated highly, or rated X stars, it unmistakably points to evaluation or assessment.
Got it. Understanding those contextual cues is way more effective than just memorizing definitions.
Precisely.
Next up, we have exaggerate, a verb that, instantly makes you think of stretching the truth. Think about this example. The hotel was really filthy, and I'm not exaggerating. Here, the speaker isn't saying they're exaggerating. Quite the opposite. They're emphasizing that the reality is so stark, so extreme, that it might sound like an exaggeration, but it isn't.
That's a great point. It's like a rhetorical device to underscore the truth, paradoxically. But in its more common usage, exaggerate directly implies distortion. Consider, demand for the product has been greatly exaggerated by marketing campaigns. This implies a situation where something's been described as larger, more widespread, or more significant than it actually is.
Amplifying the truth. Making something seem bigger, better, or worse than it truly is.
Right. Often with intent. To create an impression, mislead, or just make a point more forcefully, it's often deliberate overstatement.
So it's fascinating. Moderate is about balance, keeping things in check, while exaggerate is doing the exact opposite, pushing things beyond their true measure, maybe unintentionally, maybe deliberately.
Exactly. Polar opposites in representing reality. And from the realm of creating things, we have generate. A verb speaks to creation, production, bringing something forth. For example, the new proposal had generated a lot of interest among stakeholders. This implies causing something to come into being, to be produced, or to arise as a direct result of something else. Initiation, production, often on a significant scale.
Yeah, like generating electricity or ideas or enthusiasm. And here's where it gets particularly insightful, with an example from an exam context. However, Alan believed that the unconscious mind generates as much action as the conscious mind.
Wow, that's deep.
Right. It isn't just about physical output. It speaks to the power of origination, whether it's interest, energy, or even abstract mental activity like thoughts and behaviors.
It illustrates generate as this fundamental process of causation, highlighting what something produces or causes to manifest. It's the engine behind new phenomena.
Okay, let's shift our focus now to words that describe making things different. The whole spectrum of change and transformation, from slight tweaks to complete overhauls.
A great place to start is alter, a verb, meaning to change or modify something. For instance, he had altered so much after his time abroad that I scarcely recognized him. This shows a significant change. Appearance, state. Often a physical transformation over time. Can be profound, gradual, or sudden.
And an example from an exam highlights a more deliberate, often impactful type of change. We often hear media reports that an unauthorized hacker has been able to access a computer database and to alter information stored there.
Ah, yes. Here, alter distinctly highlights a purposeful modification, often with negative or illicit implications, like you said, intentionally transforming data from its original state, underscoring that conscious act to make something different.
So it's not just change, but intended change, often.
Often, yes. And what's fascinating here is its related term, alternate, which can be an adjective or a verb. As a verb, it describes a cyclical or sequential change, a back-and-forth movement between two states or options.
Okay, how so?
For example, scientists believe that the Earth's climate alternated between periods of extreme cold and warm throughout geological history.
Ah, so it's a pattern, a rhythmic shift, not a singular permanent alteration like alter might imply.
Exactly. It's about taking turns or variations occurring in a pattern, a crucial distinction from alter, which is usually a one-way change.
That makes sense. Then we have alternative, which captures the idea of choice in change. It can be a noun or an adjective referring to a different choice, option, or method, like, the new car is too expensive, so we're trying to find a cheaper alternative.
Right. Identifying another way or thing. A substitute, a different course of action, when the main option isn't feasible or desirable. It opens up possibilities. Powerful concept in problem solving. And as an adjective, alternative describes something different from the usual, often implying non-traditional, unconventional. What Washington does or doesn't do to promote alternative energy sources may mean less and less as global initiatives grow.
So it points to something innovative, a different path maybe, standing apart from established norms.
Precisely. Often as a response to perceived limitations of traditional methods, a deviation from the mainstream.
Building on that idea of shifting states, let's look at switch.
Uh,
As a noun, it's that familiar device, right? He flipped a switch and the lights came on.
Yeah.
But as a verb, switch signifies changing direction, state, or focus, often quite suddenly or completely, from one thing to another.
like flipping a physical switch. An abrupt, decisive change. An excellent example related to cognition illustrates this change in operational mode perfectly. When our brains switch between being focused and unfocused on a task, they tend to be more efficient, allowing for moments of creative insight.
Ah, that's interesting. It shows a dynamic internal shift between different cognitive states.
Yeah, how quickly a complex system like the brain can change its functioning, moving fluidly between modes.
And we also switch tasks, roles, even opinions, right? Implying a clear, often conscious shift. And of course, the phrasal verbs switch on and switch off, they reinforce that immediate, definitive change of state. So common.
Absolutely. Finally, in this group, modify. A verb, often confused with alter. While similar, modify typically suggests adjustments, fine-tuning, making something more suitable, functional, adapted, rather than a sweeping fundamental change.
Okay, so more like tweaking.
Often, yes. For example, the software we use has been modified specifically for our team's workflow. This implies incremental changes, improvements, customizations for a specific purpose, not a complete overhaul.
That distinction is crucial. Another example. Patients are taught how to modify their diet based on their health needs. Here, modify is about making changes for improvement or adaptation. Not necessarily drastic, overnight transformation, but calculated adjustments.
Exactly. Adapting to new requirements or conditions through targeted alterations. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, all these words, alter, alternative, switch, modify, they collectively speak to the dynamism of situations and the human or systemic ability to adapt, innovate, create new paths.
Highlighting the fluidity of states, the constant need for adjustment.
Right. Each word uniquely contributes to describing different facets of change. Alter for broader, perhaps profound change, switch for abrupt shifts, modify for precise adjustments, and alternative for choice and new possibilities.
Okay, great summary. Now let's dive into a rich set of words all about showing, telling, hinting, expressing ideas, the various ways meaning is conveyed and manifested.
Sounds good. Let's start with demonstrate, a verb with several important facets. It can mean to prove or show evidence in a concrete way. For instance, the recent award for the town's park demonstrated the high importance that local people place on green spaces and road safety.
So the award serves as tangible proof, illustrating a community value.
Exactly, providing concrete evidence that leaves little room for doubt, often validating an observation.
And an impactful example from an exam highlights a practical demonstration of a principle. Alvarez's personal experience, as detailed in the case study, powerfully demonstrates the importance of finding ways to diffuse workplace stress.
Ah, so it's not just theory. It's a real-life situation acting as a vivid illustration, showing something through observable facts, lived experience, proving a point through application.
Yeah.
And beyond proving, its noun form, demonstration, can refer to showing how something works, like a product demonstration.
Right, actively performing the steps.
Or it can refer to a public display of opinion, like a protest or a political rally. That's also a demonstration of collective will.
So it covers practical instruction and collective expression. Makes sense. Moving to illustrate, also a verb. And it's all about making things clearer, right? Often through vivid examples or visuals. To illustrate my point about sustainable living, let me tell you a little story about my neighbor's zero-waste garden.
Using specific instances or mental pictures, making a concept more vivid and understandable by providing a concrete example.
Shedding light on the abstract idea.
Exactly. And to show its application in more serious contexts. The recent cybersecurity incident clearly illustrates the urgent need for better digital security measures across all sectors. This shows how a specific event can highlight a requirement or a truth, serving as a real-world example that makes the abstract concept of need concrete, undeniable.
Makes an argument more compelling, more comprehensible through a specific case. And its noun form is illustration. We see that all the time in books, articles, pictures, diagrams, detailed examples that help explain or enhance a text, visualize complex concepts.
Right. Then we have exemplify, a verb that goes beyond merely illustrating. To exemplify means to be a typical or perfect example of something, almost embodying its essence.
Okay, give me an example.
His meticulously crafted pastries exemplify Italian baking at its absolute best, a true blend of tradition and innovation. This is about embodying the finest qualities, being a prime, quintessential example that perfectly represents a category, standard, or ideal.
So it's not just an example, but the definitive example.
Precisely.
And in an academic context, an exam example shows its power. The author intends to exemplify people's intuitive response to social epidemics by detailing case studies of rapid behavioral shifts.
Clarifying a broader theoretical concept by providing a prime instance, using a specific compelling case to make a general idea understandable and relatable.
Solidifies an abstract idea by giving it a perfect, living embodiment.
Well put. Shifting to a slightly more subtle form of communication, let's explore indicate. Indicate is a verb meaning to show, point out, or suggest something, often indirectly or through data. The latest survey data from the customer feedback forms clearly indicate a general satisfaction with the new online ordering process.
So it shows what the data points towards, providing a sign or a strong suggestion about a state or trend.
Exactly. Drawing inferences from observable facts, not explicitly stating a conclusion, but guiding towards it.
And another subtle usage from an exam example highlights its role in outlining methods. The various ways of reading indicated here are without doubt kinds of comprehension essential for academic success.
Here, indicated means what is suggested or implicitly laid out, outlining methods or approaches implied rather than directly dictated.
Not a direct order, but a clear pointing to a path or interpretation, subtly present.
Precisely. In its noun form, indicator refers to specific signs or signals, like a gauge on a car's dashboard indicating speed or fuel.
Or economic indicators suggesting market health, concrete markers giving clues about something larger.
Exactly.
That brings us directly to indication, the noun form. When we asked for instructions, they gave no indication of how the work should be done, leaving us completely in the dark.
Meaning no sign, no clue, no hint. The absence of a signal or guidance. Conversely, an exam example shows its presence. There are some early indications that the company is preparing to do just that, launch a new product line next quarter. This shows that hints or signs are present, subtle clues suggesting a future action or state, not definitive proof, but suggestive evidence.
So, to clarify, indicate is the action of showing or suggesting. And indication is the resulting sign itself, the evidence or clue, present or absent.
Perfect. Now let's delve into hint. Again, both a noun and a verb. Suggest something indirectly, often very subtly, as a noun. There was a faint hint of amusement in his voice when he described the chaotic meeting.
A subtle clue, a slight suggestion of a feeling, meaning, or outcome. Not explicitly stated, but discernible if you're paying attention. An unsaid undertone.
Exactly. Something you pick up on.
An example demonstrates the verb in action, often in political or diplomatic contexts. The community's minister has hinted that George Osborne may introduce more flexibility in local government funding.
Implying a soft, indirect suggestion, a tentative or cautious way of conveying possibility without full commitment or direct confirmation. Deliberate but veiled communication.
So this raises a really interesting point. How does hint truly differ from indication? They both seem subtle.
That's a great question. While both involve subtle information, a hint often feels more deliberate. A purposeful act of indirect communication, even if veiled.
Okay.
An indication, on the other hand, can be an unintended sign, like a physical symptom of an illness, or a data point that indicates a trend without conscious intent from a speaker.
Okay. So one is typically a subtle message from someone. The other is often just an observable clue.
Generally, yes. That's a good way to think about it.
Okay. Building on showing and making apparent, we have manifest. As an adjective, manifest means obvious, clear, readily apparent. His nervousness was manifest to all those present at the job interview. You could practically feel it.
You can clearly see it, undeniable, easily perceptible, on full display. And as a verb, manifest means to show something clearly or to become apparent, often moving from an internal or hidden state to an external, visible one. The symptoms of the mysterious disease manifested themselves 10 days later, making the diagnosis clear.
Becoming visible, appearing, expressing itself concretely after being hidden or latent.
Right. This can also apply to abstract concepts, ideas or intentions that manifest in someone's actions.
Leading us to embody, a verb signifying bringing an abstract idea or quality into tangible form, or including features that represent something larger. This new model of electric vehicle truly embodies many innovative features that redefine urban transport.
Here, the model literally contains and expresses those features, making them concrete and functional within its design, giving form and substance to something abstract.
Yeah.
I get that.
And a deep concept, again, from an exam example, really drives this home. Achievement happens because you, as a person, embody the external achievement through your dedication and resilience.
Wow. Highlighting how a person can literally represent or be the living form of an abstract concept like achievement.
Exactly, being the concrete representation of an idea, not just possessing it, but being it, making it real through one's very being or actions.
Powerful stuff. Let's pivot now to exploring indirect suggestions with imply. Imply is a verb, meaning to suggest something without explicitly stating it, conveying a meaning that's understood or inferred. I disliked the implied criticism in his tone when he said, "That's an interesting approach." It's about what's suggested between the lines, a meaning inherent but not directly articulated, often leaving room for interpretation, requiring inference. And in a more formal context, the latest demographic survey implies that more people are moving house to suburban areas than was previously thought, even if the report doesn't state it outright. Here, imply means the survey's findings logically suggest a conclusion, leading one to infer something based on data.
Drawing a logical inference from presented evidence, even if it's not explicit.
Correct.
Its powerful derivative is implication. An exam example highlights its weight. The Supreme Court's decisions on physician-assisted suicide carry profound and important implications for how medicine seeks to relieve dying patients.
Shaping future ethical guidelines. Its implication here is about the possible effects or results, the far-reaching consequences or inherent connections suggested or inherent in a decision, action, or circumstance. Following from imply, implicit is an adjective, meaning understood or suggested without being directly stated, often inherent. These underlying assumptions are entirely implicit in his writing, though he never once mentions them directly.
They are inherent, foundational, not explicitly on the surface, but essential to understanding. You have to read between the lines, infer from context, subtext.
It's the unstated truth.
Exactly. It's what you infer, what's subtly conveyed rather than what's directly given, demands deeper engagement.
And then, providing a strong contrast, we have explicit, an adjective, meaning stated clearly and in detail, leaving no room for confusion or doubt.
She was quite explicit about why she had left the company, detailing every reason in her resignation letter. No room for doubt there.
Unambiguous, directly stated, leaves no question about meaning or intention. Clear, plain, straightforward.
An exam example beautifully illustrates the contrast between these two. It is this implicit or explicit reference to nature, whether subtly hinted at or clearly laid out, that fully justifies the use of the word garden.
Right. Highlighting the two ways a connection can be presented. Subtly, requiring inference. Implicit, or overtly, leaving no ambiguity explicit. And another powerful use from an exam reinforces its meaning in legal or authoritative contexts. The new legislation needs to give the Commission explicit authority, once and for all, to regulate these emerging technologies.
Here, explicit means unambiguous and clearly stated, conferring undeniable power, permission, responsibility, removes misinterpretation, no gray areas.
Precisely.
Shifting gears slightly now, let's turn our attention to words that describe attitude, disposition, and how they're expressed in actions and communication.
An interesting one here is modest, an adjective with a couple of distinct but related meanings. It can mean humble, showing a moderate estimation of one's own abilities or achievements. Consider the example from Darwin's autobiography. In his autobiography, Darwin himself speaks of his intellectual powers with extraordinary modesty.
Despite his revolutionary insights. Yeah, that highlights humility, a lack of excessive pride, especially when discussing one's own achievements. But modest also has that quantitative sense, right? Referring to something not too large or expensive, often implying sufficiency without extravagance. For instance, the initial research was carried out on a modest scale due to limited funding, but still yielded promising results.
Here, modest refers to size, extent, or cost, not personality. Describes something as moderate, limited, unpretentious, often implying a careful, conservative approach.
Okay.
And an example beautifully ties modest back to humility, but almost to a fault. The court would be recklessly modest if it followed California's advice and did not assert its jurisdiction.
Implying being overly humble or reserved to a detrimental degree, where assertion is needed but humility is inappropriately applied.
Exactly. And its noun form is, of course, modesty, directly relating to being humble. Next we have earnest, an adjective describing intense sincerity and genuine purpose. Despite her earnest efforts to secure funding, the startup could not find a sustainable path forward.
Emphasizes genuine, serious endeavor, deep conviction, dedication, determination in pursuing a goal, often against odds.
conveys profound commitment, a lack of superficiality.
And in a social context, when I looked over, he was engaged in earnest conversation with his father, their faces serious and focused.
Here, Ernest described the serious, sincere nature of the interaction, indicating the conversation was profound, heartfelt, not superficial. Both parties fully engaged.
Then, creating a stark contrast to modest and earnest, we have arrogant, an adjective describing someone excessively proud, self-important, often dismissive. He was known as a rude, arrogant young man who rarely listened to advice.
Portrays someone with an exaggerated sense of their own importance, leading to disrespectful, condescending, overbearing behavior, and it almost always influences how someone behaves, often negatively.
Yeah.
The chief inspector immediately disliked his arrogant manner and dismissive attitude during the interrogation.
It's about that overbearing confidence, right? A haughty bearing from believing one is superior frequently creates friction, negative impressions.
Exactly. Hinders collaboration, effective communication. Finally in this group, eloquent. An adjective describing powerful, fluent, and persuasive expression. Despite his initial shyness, he grew very eloquent on the subject of environmental policy.
Passionately articulating complex ideas.
Yeah.
Implying speaking with great fluency, grace, force. Expressing thoughts clearly, effectively, movingly.
It's about articulate and impactful communication that can captivate an audience.
And the Prime Minister's speech was both eloquent and exceptionally well-informed, resonating deeply with the public.
Conveys the speech was not just well delivered, but also highly impactful, capable of moving or persuading through skillful, powerful language.
Okay, let's unpack another cluster. Words around creating something new, putting resources into it, and then examining it closely. Discovery, investment, scrutiny.
Sounds like a process. Let's start with invent. A verb means to create something new, whether tangible, a process, or even abstract. What excuse did he invent this time to avoid the deadline? It's usually quite elaborate.
Meaning fabricating a story, concocting a falsehood, making something up that isn't true, conjuring from imagination, maybe constructively, maybe deceptively.
Right.
And here's where it gets particularly thought-provoking from that study on marketing. And one of the easiest ways to segment a market is to either magnify existing gender differences or to invent them entirely.
Ah, yes. Showing invent not in sense of physical creation, but constructing something that might not entirely exist, or amplifying it so much it becomes a new, manipulated reality.
For a specific purpose, like market segmentation, raises ethical questions about constructing perceived realities.
Absolutely. That example highlights the range of invent. Its noun is invention, as in fax machines were a wonderful invention, and the person is an inventor. This ability to create is foundational.
Building on creation, invest, a verb, meaning to put money, time, effort, resources into something expecting future benefit, return, growth. Government agencies must invest more funds in training and development programs.
Allocating resources strategically, hoping for a significant return long-term.
Yeah.
Financial, human capital, societal improvement, and a fascinating research finding from an exam context connects investment to broader well-being. Companies located in places with happier people tend to invest more in research and development.
That's wild. It raises a question, right? How does the social environment, like collective happiness, influence economic behavior like corporate investment?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Suggests a direct link between societal well-being and a broader understanding of return on investment beyond just money.
Truly compelling. And the person doing this is an investor.
Right. The noun form, investment, refers to the act itself or the result. To encourage innovation, the report calls for increased investment in cutting-edge research.
Highlighting the strategic importance of putting capital, effort, time into development, anticipating future gains. And we often hear specific terms like startup investor, someone putting money into new businesses, early stages, high risk, high reward. Shifting to the flip side, scrutiny, investigate, verb, meaning to carry out a formal inquiry, systematic examination, in-depth research, usually to discover facts or truth. An exam example gives a clear legal context. Any guaranteed bonuses could be delayed if their banks are currently under investigation for serious wrongdoing.
Shows a formal inquiry into misconduct. Systematic process of gathering evidence, facts to uncover truth or confirm wrongdoing. And another example from an exam shows its use in academic research. The researchers diligently investigated one specific class session's impact on students' long-term eating habits.
A systematic study, methodical examination to explore a topic, understand causes, effects, characteristics, thorough, structured, rigorous.
Right. The noun is investigation, the overall process or result.
Building on investigation, we have probe, noun and verb. Means to explore or examine deeply, meticulously. Often something complex, sensitive, hidden.
As a verb, he became increasingly annoyed that the media kept probing into his past.
Suggests an intrusive, thorough examination, delving into sensitive or private matters in detail, like using a physical probe.
Exactly.
An example in an academic critique captures this depth. While comprehensive, Rosenberg's book ultimately fails to adequately probe the intricate social and biological factors.
Here, probe means explore thoroughly, analyze in depth. Indicating the analysis didn't go deep enough implies a need for more penetrating, rigorous examination, beyond the superficial.
Getting to the bottom of something complex or sensitive.
Yes, probe often carry that connotation. Digging, persistent inquiry, uncovering hidden truths, even uncomfortable ones.
Finally in this group, survey, noun and verb, a specific method of investigation. As a noun, a recent survey of urban residents showed that 75% were strongly in favor.
Gathering information from a representative sample, usually through questionnaires or interviews, gauging opinions, trends, characteristics in a larger group, and as a verb, survey is the act of conducting that inquiry. We meticulously surveyed 500 smokers and found that over 3/4 would genuinely like to give up.
It's the active process of collecting data from individuals to draw broader conclusions. Structured approach.
Right. So while probe is about deep individual exploration, survey is about broad data collection to understand patterns.
That's a great distinction. Survey is that systematic method for investigating opinions or characteristics across a population. A wide-angle view, not a deep dive into one point.
Precisely.
Next up, we're looking at how things are moved, delivered, and how systems and bodies operate. Transmission, transfer, biological or systemic functions.
Okay. Let's begin with convey. A versatile verb, two main senses. First, transport. Carry something place to place, often physically. A network of specialized pipes efficiently convey hot water from the central boiler.
Physical movement, carrying something point A to point B, often through a system.
Exactly.
But convey also has that more abstract meaning, right? Communicate or transmit ideas, feelings, information. Colors like deep red often convey a strong sense of energy and passion, while soft blues convey calmness.
Shows how abstract ideas, emotions, messages are communicated, passed along, often without explicit words, through subtle cues, tone, art, effectively communicating intangibles.
Right. Then deliver, verb, primarily meaning bring goods to a recipient or communicate something formally.
Our new same-day service promises to deliver your package within 48 hours, getting something to its destination, fulfilling a promise of transport or communication.
But here's where deliver gets really interesting, an application from an example that goes beyond simple physical transport. The new low-emission zones do deliver some measurable improvements to urban air quality over time.
Here, deliver means produce or provide a result, bring about a specific outcome or benefit, often promised or intended.
Transcends mere physical transfer to the actual generation of an impact or consequence.
Nicely put. Its noun form is delivery, bringing something, or the manner of a speech.
Now, organ. Noun. Primarily known for a body part, right? He suffered from multiple organ failure.
Yes, but it can also refer to a formal institution, a governmental department, a specialized branch of a larger organization, serving a specific function within that system.
So both meanings refer to a distinct functional unit within a larger system.
Exactly, which builds nicely to organic. Adjective. Wide range of uses, but all circling back to natural, systematic structure. It can refer to food produced without chemicals. The farm went fully organic in 2016. Natural, environmentally friendly cultivation.
And an example shows how a niche concept can become mainstream. Organic eggs went from being dismissed as a niche product to being widely sold at Walmart.
Signaling a significant shift in consumer preferences, broader market acceptance, natural expansion. But organic also describes things relating to living organisms or processes that develop naturally, systematically from within, not imposed externally.
Like organic growth of a business, growing from its own operations, not mergers.
Precisely. And broadly, it can refer to the systematic, interconnected structure, organization. The core connection is interdependent parts working together naturally, forming a functional whole.
Like a living system, a business, an abstract concept. An organ is part of an organic system that is organized to function. Wow, that ties it all together.
It does create a nice network, doesn't it?
Yeah, and when we organize things, we arrange them systematically. Bring order. She helped to organize various charity events, managing logistics, volunteers.
And if things aren't organized, they're disorganized. Lacking order, efficiency. An example. If you're talking to managers, you may refer to the disorganized methods of their secretaries, highlighting a lack of system.
Right.
Finally, in this segment, function. Noun. Purpose. Role. The way something works. The new building's design aims for harmony of form and function. Aesthetics and practicality.
So function as a noun is about practical utility, intended purpose, operational capability, how it works, what it's supposed to do.
Correct. But crucially, it's also a verb, meaning to work or operate, perform a specified action or role.
An example highlights its importance in tech. If customers are not willing to share data, the sophisticated AI algorithms simply will not be able to function effectively.
This is about systems operating as intended, performing their designated tasks successfully, highlighting the operational capacity of any system, human, mechanical, digital.
Okay.
Which leads to a fascinating overarching question for this section. How do the specific organs and organic systems within a text, concept, or society function together? How do they convey its overall message or deliver its intended outcome? It's about understanding how components work in concert to transmit meaning, creating a cohesive whole.
Like a living organism. That's a great way to think about it. Okay, to wrap up our deep dive into Day 7, Part 2, let's look at words that speak to what comes before, what exists widely, and how things are used. Precedence, existence, utility.
All right. First, previous. Adjective. Simply meaning happening or existing before the one being discussed. Any building plans submitted before that date are considered to be under the previous rules. Sequential order. Referring to what immediately preceded. Simple temporal relationship.
Now, prior. Also an adjective, often confused with previous, but you said there's a nuance.
A crucial one. Prior often implies something needs to happen first or holds precedence, indicating an earlier right or a necessary condition.
Okay, example.
This highly sensitive information must not be disclosed without prior written consent.
Ah, the consent must come first. A necessary condition. An earlier right taking precedence, not just before, but before, and therefore more important or required.
Exactly. That distinction is key. Another use, the elderly couple had a prior claim to the property, indicates a stronger earlier right, precedes others in legal standing or importance.
And we use prior to meaning before, often implying preparation or a condition.
Right. So while previous is chronological, prior layers on prerequisite or superior standing.
So previous is just before in time. Prior suggests a condition, a more important before, or something needing action first.
Got it. Crucial for precision.
Exactly. Which naturally leads us to priority, a noun, something more important than other things, needing to be dealt with first. In emergency situations, medical personnel always give priority to stabilizing the patient's breathing. What comes first in importance? Defining what needs immediate attention, resources, effort.
Establishing sequence based on urgency or significance. An example shows how we apply this personally. Another effective approach is to rethink how you prioritize your day, focusing on high-impact tasks first.
And the verb form is prioritize or prioritize. Arrange tasks in order of importance. Decide what merits immediate attention, core skill and time management. Moving to prevail, verb. Captures widespread existence or ultimate triumph. It can mean to be widespread or common. Those traditional beliefs still prevail among certain social groups. Suggests commonly found, existing extensively, generally accepted. Widespread presence, persistence. Or, more dynamically, it means to triumph or overcome. Prove more powerful, superior. After hours of heated debate, common sense finally prevailed, meaning good sense or an argument won the day. Overcame challenges, ultimate victory or dominance.
Right. Its adjective form, prevailing, describes what is current or dominant,
Right.
like a fashionable hairstyle prevailing in the city, indicating what's popular, current, dominant, now, captures the current state.
Okay, next, avail, verb, often formal, meaning to use or take advantage of something, typically a resource or opportunity for one's benefit. To avail all these exclusive membership benefits, simply register online. Making use of an opportunity, resource, service available to you, leveraging something accessible.
Right. We often hear, why not avail yourself of our special offers? And quite commonly, the negative phrase, of little no avail, meaning not useful or helpful despite efforts.
Like, despite their best efforts, the rescue attempts were of no avail. lack of effectiveness or success despite endeavor.
Exactly.
And its super common derivative is available, meaning able to be used or obtained, accessible, ready for use.
An example. Local officials are diligently using all the levers that are available to them to promote economic development, utilizing every resource or power accessible.
Right.
Finally, to tie this segment together, prevalent. Adjective. Describes something widespread or common in a particular area or time. These prejudices are particularly prevalent among people living in the North. Describes something frequently encountered, observed, existing in large numbers in a specific context.
Another example. The disease is even more prevalent in Latin America. Describes how widespread something is, emphasizing extensive occurrence or distribution.
So, to clearly distinguish prevalent from prevail, prevalent describes a state of being widespread. A static characteristic something is common.
Okay.
While prevail describes the action or process of becoming widespread or of triumphing something becomes common or wins out.
Ah, state versus action. Got it. Conceptually linked but different aspects of dominance or commonality. Wow, what an incredibly rich journey through Day 7, Part 2. Seriously, we haven't just listed these words, we've truly taken a deep dive. Seeing them in action across diverse contexts, understanding subtle differences, exploring derivatives. We saw how moderate applies to quantities and discussions, how invent creates objects and realities, how organic connects biology and structure. The goal here always is to help you build that robust, interconnected conceptual network, enhancing reading comprehension, sharpening critical thinking, making you feel truly well-informed and confident for exams and beyond, building a living, breathing understanding of the language.
Absolutely. This approach, remembering connections, how words function, distinguishing precise meanings, it's infinitely more powerful, more enduring than isolated memorization. As you continue reading, keep an eye out for these words. Notice how they're used in different fields. Ask yourself, why that word here, not another similar one? That curiosity is your most powerful learning tool.
We genuinely hope this deep dive helps you feel more confident, more connected to the, intricacies of English, maybe even a little more excited about the power of precise word choice. Keep practicing, keep exploring those nuances, keep asking those deep questions. And before we sign off, we'd love to hear from you. Do you have any real-world examples where a subtle word choice completely altered the implications of a sentence for you? Maybe in the news, a book, a conversation. Share your thoughts and examples in the comments below. We're always eager to hear how these words manifest in your own linguistic discoveries. Thank you for joining us on Listen to Deep Dive and Learn Words. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support our journey. We'll be back soon with another deep dive.
Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep making those powerful connections.